And I used to tell myself, like, I'll never be that. I'll never be that, until I was. And I hated myself. Like, I remember being in that broken down trailer on that dead end road and looking at that bottle of Kentucky Deluxe and being big with child and telling myself, just take one. Just take one. And I would always finish the bottle. And you want to talk about the guilt that you have as a mother, feeling your baby moving inside you, knowing that you have just put all this alcohol in your body.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of Jeri that you heard at the beginning of this here episode. Episode, folks, number 400. 400. Can you believe we have made it to 400? Man, never thought in a million years, but nonetheless, boom, shakalaka laka, we are here. But nonetheless, you're going to hear a lot more from Jeri in just a moment. But this here episode number 400, goes out to, or is made possible by, Teresa, Ian, Adrian, David, Kate, and Terry. So you may ask yourself, what exactly did Teresa, Ian, Adrian, David, Kate, and Terry do? Well, they they visited our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Teresa, Ian, Adrian, David, Kate, and Terry. This here episode is going right out to Ewans. As always, we are going to let the other folks listen on in, but this one is coming out to you guys. Thank you very much for your generosity. And as I've said a million times, you don't need to donate to listen to this particular podcast. You can if and when the Spirit moves you, but I'm just glad you're here with us. Whatever you're doing, if you're driving, if you're cleaning, I hear a lot of people doing that. Working out, I hear. Some people are on a plane. Some people are walking the dog. Some people are incarcerated. Whatever you're doing to pass the time, I'm just ecstatic that you have joined us here today on episode number 400. There's some updates in my life that I'm going to pass this week. I'm going to get right on into Miss Jeri. So Jeri, part one here is from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, where the wind comes. And down their plane, something like that. Anyway, we are calling her first episode. This one's definitely a two-parter. You're going to have to tune in next week for the second part. But anyway, this one is called, the first part is called The Guilt of a Mother. Jeri has been sober for 16 years, and she was a small-town girl, as she calls it, raised in Oklahoma with amazing parents. She said, if it were possible to parent alcoholism out of an individual, those parents would have done it. Her parents would have done it. It's a great way to put it. She was a runaway when she was younger and had a spiritual breakdown during that time and continued to push people away. Among other things, we speak about her boyfriend, who was a manufacturer. We have a few of those in AA. I guess he was what do they call it? An entrepreneur. But anyway, we talk about her multiple boyfriends who all had DOC numbers. Just in case you don't know what DOC is, that stands for a Department of Corrections. We talked about her shame and guilt as of a mother in her throes of addiction. You'll notice a hard stop at the end of this episode, but we'll pick it up next week with part 2 of Jeri Dawn's story. And just in case, well, not just in case, just so you know, Jeri Dawn will actually be speaking at the Crested Butte Conference this summer in Crested Butte, Colorado. That's at the end of July. I've been to, I may be going up there. I really am not sure yet. But as of at this time, I'm not going, but Jeri Dawn will be there and she's worth the price of the ticket, believe me. I've recorded a couple of episodes on this. If you want to go back in the archives and hear those, you can, but it's a great place to be and you can meet Jeri Dawn in person. What else? Oh, the other thing is, before this episode gets started, we're playing like a 2-3 minute song here. This song is from Lyn B. Lyn has been on the podcast several times. We'll put a link to her music in this in the show notes here. And it's just incredible music that she has. She writes all about the steps and recovery. This one's called Believer. In my mind, it's about step 2. I don't know for sure that's exactly what it is, but anyway, I know you're going to enjoy the song, and which we're going to play on the front of the episode. And then I know you're going to enjoy the first part of Jeri Dawn's talk. And once again, we'll follow up with part 2 of Jeri Dawn. Jeri Dawn, what's that flower you got on? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, now on to Lyn and then Jeri Dawn. And we will have plenty of listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy.
It might be hard to imagine him drunk and raising hell, but he had the scars to prove it. Served 10 years in a prison cell. Now he acts more like an angel. His words are kind and wise. Once asked him what was his secret, he smiled and replied, I'm a believer. There's forgiveness for sin. Love is the answer. Nobody has to stay broken.
everybody. So we are sitting here today with the one, the only Miss Jeri Dawn from Oklahoma City. So Jeri Dawn, I'm going to have you go ahead, first things first, go ahead, introduce yourself. And I've already told people where you live, but tell people where you live in this great land of ours. And also, if you could give your sobriety date, if you will, please.
Absolutely. My name's Jeri Dawn. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 28th of 2008, and I live in Oklahoma City.
March 28th, 2008. So do the math for us. That's how many years?
16.
16 years. My
Mhm.
goodness. And before we get going too far, I want to say that, first of all, Jeri Dawn is actually in Studio AA today with us. This is not a remote recording. And we also have a special friend of hers. Kyler, do you want to just like step to the mic and just say your name and, why you're down here with Jeri Dawn?
Hi, I'm Kyler Handy. I'm an alcoholic, and I am here to support my sponsor.
There you go. And where do you live, Kyler?
I also live in Oklahoma City.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And Kyler's kind of sitting over in the corner of the room. She's got a computer out and she's doing homework, I think, for, I guess you're in school, college. She is in college and she's finishing up some of her work there. So anyway, you just have fun over there. And if you have any questions of us while we're recording, let us know. Okay. All right. So you guys drove down from Oklahoma City this morning and you are actually going to speak at Citywide tonight. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Citywide in Dallas. I got asked a few months ago. And so whenever this opportunity presented itself, it was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I can go down. I went to a meeting today at the Fourth Dimension in Frisco, Texas with you, and then came here, and then I get to go to Citywide in Dallas. So it's a great AA day.
That's what, and for me, I may go to that meeting tonight. So for me, I'll go to the, I'll go to this the Frisco Fourth Dimension, be able to record you. I got to do a little editing after you guys leave, and then go on down there, see you, and it's a great AA day for me as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. So, first things first, I want to talk about your name. Jeri Dawn.
Yeah.
I mean, we could tell you are not from Boston.
Not at all. Jeri Dawn. I'm named after my daddy. My daddy's name is Jeri Dawn, and when I was born, he always wanted a little girl named after him, and so they named me Jeri Dawn. And growing up, they called me Dawn. My parents called me Dawn because it was too confusing having two Jerrys. And then I got older and rebellious, and I was like, I don't want to be called Dawn. I'm going to be called Jeri. And then I got a little older, and it was real confusing. I started just going by Jeri Dawn. That's the story of the evolving name that I have. Came all the way back to my birth certificate. Yeah, Jeri Dawn.
That's great. I love it. Okay, well, now let me make the distinction. Okay, so you have a Jeri Dawn, Jerridawn.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a feminine version of it. Does your dad spell his name in a masculine kind of way, so to speak?
Yeah, it's the Jerrydon. Yep.
Really interesting. I don't think I've ever come across that before. And it's like when you're in Texas and you hear the name Billy Bob. This is just the female version in Oklahoma. So it's Jeri Dawn.
That's right. I always tell people my dad's the original. My daddy is the original, Jeri Dawn. So yeah.
Very, very nice. Okay, so you guys are down here. You're going to go record. Now we're going to get the good version here at Sober Speak, and then we'll let you go give the second-rate version of your story.
Yeah, that's
down
right.
at Citywide, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into let's talk. By the way, I was able to meet you and your husband last week, or as I say last week, probably been like a month or two ago now, something like that. When I came down to Oklahoma City, it was so nice to meet you, your husband, all the people involved with that event. Randy, I want to talk about him because he's actually the one who referred me over to you. And then the other person I think we wanted to mention just a little bit here was the individual, I don't know, you. So right before we started this.
Yeah. Yes.
They were taking a picture of Jeri, Don, and I sitting here at the the mics because there's somebody in Oklahoma City. What's her name?
Her name is Jennifer M. She's from my home group, and she saw you because you spoke at our citywide in Oklahoma City, and she was so excited to meet you because she said that I think she came up to you and she told me she came up to you and said, "I've fallen asleep many times listening to your voice," and then she was like, that might have sounded creepy to him. But anyway, she has many nights gotten to listen to you interview people, and it's made a huge impact in her life. And she is just so excited that we're here. And so we took a picture so we could send it to her. It'll mean a lot to her that you say hi to her and that we just, it's good.
Very cool. And there was a lot of people I met, and that's the thing when you go out and speak and you get to actually meet people in person who've been listening to your podcast for a while, and it's really cool. And there was one lady here, and I don't know whether if it's Jennifer or not. I because I talked to a lot of people that were listening to it, but they said something to the effect of, "Hey, John M., I was so glad to listen to your talk today, but I want to let you know that I'm going to take the best and I'm going to leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up." I thought that was really cute.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of a Jeri Dawn here. So, where'd you grow up, Jeri? Jeri Dawn, excuse me.
Yeah, you're fine. I've been called worse. And so I grew up in Amber, Oklahoma. It's just a small town in Oklahoma. The truth is, I'm a small town girl. We say now I'm from Oklahoma City, and I'm not a city girl. I'm just not. And so when I was growing up, I was just always in a small town. Of course, being a little kid, it's the last place you want to be is in a small town. But that's where I grew up. And now that I've gotten older, it's like, I just want to get back to a small town.
Do you ever sing that song, "I'm from a small town" or whatever? You know that song I'm talking about?
I don't, but it's probably a mantra in my head anyway. That's what's going on in my head anyway.
The other thing, I'm sorry. Now, here's the downside of doing a recording. And I get people telling me all the time that just shut up and let the speaker speak. All right. But I do have to say, when I first heard your name, I was singing that song in my head, Delta Dawn.
Yeah. I've heard that one. Yeah. All my life.
Yeah. Oh, and Small Town is by John Cougar Mellencamp. I was born in a small town.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. So enough of me, back to Jeri Dawn. So you grew up in a small town. And at the time you didn't want to be there. What are your thoughts about that now?
Oh man, my thoughts about that now are I was really, really blessed. The truth is, John, is that I come from really, really good parents. I have amazing parents, and I know that's not everybody's story that comes into Alcoholics Anonymous. But for me, the truth is that I had amazing parents that if they could have parented alcoholism out of me, they would have succeeded.
That's a very good line there. If they could have parented alcoholism out of me, they would have succeeded. Because I'm sure there are a lot of people out here who are parents right now that are listening to this, both in AA and out of AA. We get a lot of Al-Anons who listen to this. And so it's a good message for them to hear. So you were just kind of born the way you were born, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was the youngest. I have an older brother who's 7 years older than me. And I was just the youngest and, daddy's little girl, as we've already talked about, daddy's little girl. And so I was, a pretty, I don't know, I was out in the country and I was always outside. I didn't want to be in the house. I wanted to be outside. And I just had this spirit about me. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be doing something else all the time. And I was always riding horses or climbing trees. My parents would be gone doing something, come back, I'd be on top of the barn dancing around. You know what I mean? I was always trying to change my perception. I was just rambunctious. And my parents kept me busy in activities. My dad was a teacher and a coach and a principal, and my mom worked the same job for like almost 30 years. I mean, they were just stable, good people. And so they got me busy doing things because they knew if they didn't keep me busy, I was going to get myself into trouble. That's the bottom line. And they kept me playing ball and whatever they could put me in, I did. and they always encouraged me. It was never a lack of love in my home, but we did move around some. My dad was an educator, and so he went to different schools. The first time we ever changed schools, I remember crying and telling my dad, "But I don't want to leave my friends." Right? And that's and my parents told me a natural thing that it's very natural to tell your child you'll make new friends, and that's what they told me. But somehow later on, I figured out what happened for me was, and not their fault, but people became replaceable.
Mm.
And I started to, be whatever anybody needed me to be in that moment, to have the friends, to do the things, to look good on the outside. But then when they were gone, I'd find somebody else to replace them. And that followed me into adulthood, with relationships and things like that. But, I had a good childhood, really. I did. I was 9 years old when I picked up my very first drink, though.
9?
Yeah, 9.
That's pretty early.
Well, I had a plan. That was the bad news. I had a master plan. I don't know. A lot of people, like their parents will tell them, "Oh, it's the friends you were hanging out with." You know what I mean? Like, "Oh, you just need to get away from that bad crowd." I was the one that was coming up with the plan. And so I was 9 years old, and I was in a little town called Cement, and
Cement?
Yes, Cement. Yes.
Do they actually?
Yeah. Well, they do a lot of extracurricular activities there, but I don't know about cement. I don't know what they do with that. So yeah, it was one of those
That's
deals.
not a good marketing ploy for a city to name your city Cement to attract people from the outside.
Well, I was a Cement bulldog because I was on the basketball team at Cement. Well, that's kind of funny when I think about it, because I always played sports, and it was like if I was doing anything like sports or dance, because my parents would put me in different things, it was like I had to be the best at it or I'm not going to do it at all.
Mm.
Right. And I remember the very first time, and if I did something I wasn't good at it, then immediately it became stupid and I will never do it again. I will never do it again. Like the very first time I ever played softball, I struck out. Well, what happened? Are you not recording?
Okay, everybody, a little peek behind the curtain here. I thought that we were not recording. I thought by we not recording, what I mean by that is I thought that I forgot to hit the button to record this because I looked down and thought I wasn't recording. And we all had a good laugh about it. We were going to come back and re-record all that stuff again. But then I realized that no, we actually are recording. Now, have you had a really good podcaster? Somebody who knew what they were doing, these kind of things would not happen. However, we're about to pick it up again, and I just want to let you know if it sounds a little herky-jerky here, it has nothing to do with Jeri Dawn. It has everything to do with me. So, all right. So we were in Cement.
Yeah.
Talking about you being on the girls' basketball team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what happened?
I think we were talking about how the fact that no matter what I did, no matter what sport I played or whatever it was, I always had to be the best or I wasn't going to do it. Just that drive that was within me, that if I'm not the best, then I'm not good enough. That was something that was there even before I picked up a drink. And always needing to prove myself to people. And so my first drink of alcohol, let me get to that. So I was 9 years old in a little town called Cement. Me and this other little blonde-headed girl, her name was Lori, we were best friends. And my dad gave me money, and the whole plan, I had planned it out. The whole plan was we were going to go into this gas station. It was the only gas station in Cement, Oklahoma, and buy loose candy. And back then, and I don't know if they still do this now, but you go into the gas station, get loose candy, they put it in a brown paper bag. You already know where I'm going with this. I'm sure some of the alcoholics listening out there know where I'm going with this. And so my plan was at 9 years old was after we get that brown paper bag to walk back to the back of the store, and put different bottles in our brown paper bags. And that's exactly what we did. And we both walked right out of that store, down one of those little streets there at Cement, and we drank what we had collected. That was my first drink of alcohol and my first, crime all in one, That's how it started out. Yeah, my first shoplifting, I was successful. They were wine coolers, but if I knew I was going to be telling this story for the rest of my life, I would have picked something like, whiskey or, something way cooler, to make me sound tough or something. But I was 9 years old and it looked pretty. And we drank it and I felt the effects produced by alcohol at 9 years old. I did. And there was something in me that said, why do they always tell me not to do this?
Mm.
I just remember thinking there's so many things that growing up that I was told, don't do that, and there was something in me it's like, why did they tell me not to? This is wonderful. And I knew I would do it again. I absolutely knew I would. And so I was just that kid from then on, just kind of that mischievous kid we talked about. And I hung out with the older kids, the kids that their parents didn't watch them as well as my parents watched me. Those are the houses I go to, where their parents were gone at the bar and we were left home alone. And we could drink the alcohol that was in the house, play spin the bottle with the boys, but when everybody was looking, I'm playing basketball. I'm the starter on the basketball team. I'm a straight A student. I'm on a national dance team. I'm doing all these other things, and I'm the principal's daughter. His pride and joy.
Mm.
But when nobody's looking, I'm doing all these other things. And so, I drank successfully until I was about 13. That's when I got into a whole bunch of trouble that I couldn't get out of. I got into a whole bunch of trouble that I couldn't get out of, and well, the thing of it was I was 13 years old and I had gotten pregnant. Yeah, that's, and I remember telling my dad and finally had to tell my dad. And I remember my dad looking at me and my dad telling me that he said, you're not going to have a baby at 13 years old. And I wasn't raised religious by any means, but I was raised with non-practicing Baptist parents, right? And I just remember looking at my dad and said, but Dad, I don't want to go to hell. And my daddy looked at me and he said, I'll go to hell for you. So when I say that my parents, if they could have parented alcoholism out of me, if their love could have kept me so, they would have been successful. I mean that, because they would go to hell and back for me to make sure my life was going to be okay. And so the truth is I did not have a baby. My parents and everything, we had the abortion, we took care of that. And from then on, it was no longer me living the double life. Now I don't care. And I started drinking at an early age to chase away the guilt and the remorse. Where a lot of other people I hear, and maybe they had longer periods of getting to drink with like impunity or drink, and you know what I mean? And yeah, they may have done something silly or gotten embarrassed, but it was after that point that my drinking and running away and doing whatever I could not to deal with myself and not to hear the voices in my head telling me how awful I was started really, really young. And so there's not a whole lot of those fun stories in there for women once that starts taking off. And so when I was 15 years old, I'd run away and went to like 4 states in 9 days. And my parents have no idea where I am, and so some of us come in here and we talk about how, I didn't hurt anybody but myself. And, for me, that's an absolute lie. I hurt everyone around me. And I believe today that in the amount of times that I caused harm and all the people that I caused harm to with my alcoholism and my actions, my alcoholism affected so many people in so many negative ways that today it's my belief that my recovery needs to affect people in positive ways, that much more. Who can I help? How can I help the next girl coming in? How can I help that next woman who thinks that if they've had something like that they did when they were younger, that God can't love them? Because you see, that's not what caused my alcoholism, but that was when the separation of the idea that I could have a relationship with God happened. And I didn't think God would want me after that. And so when we talk about having a spiritual dis-ease, that was my spiritual breakdown. And I was completely empty So I filled it with all the alcohol and, until I started running into other things that I could fill it with. I liked a lot of accelerants or whatever. Whatever it was, I started doing them. And so when I was 15, my dad come and got me in Alexandria, Louisiana. You just think, I'm sitting here thinking about that, and I'm like, 15. I've got 3 beautiful children, and I can't imagine the pain that man went through. And so he takes me back home and puts me back in school, and I run off again. And finally, they stick me in my very first treatment center when I was 15. And that was my first treatment center. And really, it was a treatment center / psychiatric ward. It was just, and I was 100% positive that I did not belong there. You know what I mean? I was like, somebody made a huge mistake. This isn't for me. There was a girl in there that purred like a cat. And I keep thinking I'll meet her in the rooms. I haven't yet.
She purred like a cat.
She would come up to you and kind of like, yeah, how cats do. Anyway, that was interesting, but that was just another surefire sign. I don't belong here. I'm not like these people. Somebody get me out of here. But, alcoholism looks like pure insanity, And so my parents just seeing that and not being alcoholics, that's the other thing. My parents do not understand it whatsoever. And they don't have to. They don't have to. It's like, and I always give this analogy. It's like some people come in, they want their family members to understand that they have alcoholism and all the things they have to do for their recovery and all these things. And I'm like, my dad has diabetes, and my dad has never, ever sat me down and explained to me how much insulin he has to take, how much he can't eat this or he can't eat that, and how I need to accommodate his disease. Why would I expect anyone to do that for me? It's my responsibility, to treat this in Alcoholics Anonymous by the grace of God through sponsorship and working the steps. It's not everybody else in my life's obligation to make sure I get that. And if I depend upon that, my dependency is off. My recovery is my responsibility. So anyway, and so I was probably about, I went to rehab, and then when I was 16 years old, I graduated high school. I was actually a junior, and I finished my senior year in 2 weeks. I'm not dumb. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people think, oh, alcohol is, no, we're not stupid people. And I wanted to drink. And my dad told me I couldn't move out of the house until I graduated high school. So I made it happen. I was like, I went to alternative school, and I talked to the principal and said, hey, can I try to finish my senior year? And he said, well, you need this credit, and this credit, and this credit. And I was like, okay. He said, you're welcome to try, but there's only 2 weeks left of school. I was like, okay. And I graduated in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my ticket out of there. And it was perfect timing when I graduated high school, because my forever man, as all 16-year-old girls have, I'm going to be with forever. It was perfect timing. The stars had aligned, and he had just gotten released from prison. So,
oh no.
Yeah.
What a great start.
My poor daddy. This is an honor to you, Dad. I don't know how you did it. But yeah. And so my dad, being a man of his word, he allowed that guy to come pick me up, and I left home at 16 years old with the guy who just got released from prison. Yeah.
How old was the guy?
Well, he was 4 years older than me, so he was 20.
Yeah, so how does the laws in Oklahoma work with that?
Well, I don't know. I'm old. No, I don't know. No, I don't know. Anyway, it worked. I mean, nobody went to jail over that. So, yeah. And so I moved out, and I wanted to get out. And here was the good news. He was just fixing to turn 21, and I was just fixing to turn 17.
He's going to get you out.
Absolutely, 100%. And it was like everything I needed. Freedom, and you can buy me all the booze I need. And he did. And he did. And I would drink. And, I would drink. I would work. He would get messed up on other things and not work. And that was a great combination for us to fight a lot, and that's the kind of relationships I'd get into. And then It was such a toxic relationship that I married him because that's what you do. You're buying me booze. Let's get married. That'll make it better. And I got married and divorced, went back to rehab. It's just that whole spectrum of, wow. And it's like so long, I couldn't see it as a problem.
Were you living in Oklahoma City at this time?
I did move up to Oklahoma City and then back. So I would go back and forth. You know what I mean? Just the alcoholic insanity of wherever, geographical changes, maybe here, maybe a different guy, maybe this.
Were your parents on the outside looking in when they
Oh,
was worried
Lord.
sick?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would try to put on, a good face. There are many times that, because I could get a job and I could work and it would look good. It could look pretty good. And they would, hope for the best. Because again, they don't understand this disease. And I was good at lying, cheating, and manipulating. If you needed me to look a certain way, I could. But what I found out was that the more you loved me, the more you got hurt. And the worse I got, the more I pushed you away. Because I did know what I was doing was wrong. Technically, I knew it was wrong. And I did feel guilt. I hear some people, and sometimes I'll hear people say, I didn't think about anybody but myself, which I agree with. But I hear people say, I didn't care about anybody but myself. And for me, that's not true. I care a lot. I love you a lot, but I can't stop. And so I'm just going to push you away because I feel the shame and the guilt and the remorse because I did it again. And so I would push them away, and I got into another relationship, divorced, and got into another relationship, and I got into like I said earlier, accelerants that I said I would never do. I said I would never do that, and I did that, which was a great combination because you can drink a lot and stay up for a long time. And it was like, and I can work faster and harder and all the things. And so I did it all. I was doing it all. And I got involved with a guy who liked to manufacture accelerants.
He was an entrepreneur.
Businessman. Anyway, and so we got into manufacturing, and I'm only like 19 years old. I'm 19 years old, and I'm with this guy, and we're manufacturing, and one night, it was really sketchy, and I told him I'm not going to go. And this is a God moment. Like, I know looking back, God saved me. I know God saved me. And I told him that night, I was like, don't go. Something's wrong. Don't go. And he told me I'd been awake too long to just go to sleep and everything would be fine. And he called me that night from jail.
Got busted.
Yeah, he got busted. And he was the second man in Grady County to ever have $1 million bond put on his head. And this is back in like 1999. Yeah.
He had a lot of manufacturing.
Yes, a lot. And I was always with him. And so the reason why I say God stepped in, first of all, I wasn't with him. But second of all, I didn't know I was pregnant. I was pregnant with my son. And my son, and so my son is now 24 years old, and his daddy is still in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, by the grace of God, I should have been there. And so, now I'm pregnant, and I have this little boy, and I know what a good mom looks like. I know what a good dad looks like. And it's like, okay, now it's time. I've got to straighten it up. It's not all about me. It's not all about me anymore. I got to stop. And I had moderated to the best of my ability. I did moderate, and I gave birth to a healthy little boy, and I went back to school. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to fly right. I've got to take care of this baby. It's just me and him. I've got to, and I went back to school and got an office job, was doing all these things, but I can feel it inside me, and it's turning. It's just turning. Like I need out. Like I need relief. I need relief. And I start drinking again, and I don't stop. And I started getting involved in, other relationships and things like that. And I do what I do best, which all of the relationships that I would get into, I was really bad about that. I couldn't just be by myself. I would always have a new relationship. There was always a plan B, another guy. I would use men like I did alcohol. And all of them have a DOC number. You know
Had
what I
a
mean?
what?
A Department of Corrections number. It's almost a requirement. Something about a guy in stripes. I don't know what it is, but
So I guess that made them hotter or whatever.
Yes,
They're like-
absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to, and guys will walk up to me and recite their DOC number after I've told my story. We can't take ourselves too seriously here. Yeah. And so, yeah.
And we were talking about this actually before we started recording, I think, and that we were talking about how, I mean, just looking at you, right? Just looking at Kyler, y'all, if you're just walking through a mall, you can't tell, we blend in very nicely.
Yeah, we
You
assimilate.
wouldn't know that you dated a lot of guys with DOC numbers, right? You just look like an average housewife,
Yeah.
walking, trying to get your stuff done. But nonetheless, all right. Okay, so you're dating these guys with these DOC numbers, and then I kind of took you off track. What happened then?
Well, another guy with the DOC number, and so I got with him. He'd just gotten released from prison, immediately hot. And I don't know what you did out there, but I don't know what dating is. It's like, hi, I like you. Now we live together. That's kind of how that went. And I get pregnant with my daughter, and I at this point I'm telling myself, okay, don't do the other stuff, right? Don't do the accelerants. Don't do the extracurricular. Just drink beer. You can drink beer. Beer's fine. Beer's not going to hurt anybody, right? But I don't do a beer. I've never done anything. It's like, it's not enough. And so I drank, and by the grace of God, I gave birth to a healthy little girl, by the grace of God. And she's 2 years younger than Jeffrey, my oldest. And so anyway, here I am. And I break up with him because I don't know what it is, but you got to go. I'm sure you're the problem. So get out of here. And so I'm on my own again. And it's just like this cycle. So what happens is this, because I want to tell you this. Towards the end of my drinking, at this point, I'd gotten into a relationship with a guy I'd known for a very, very long time. He had no kids, and he took me and my 2 kids in. And the first night, so I'm really good at interviewing. I think alcoholics, some of us are really good at that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I can show up and interview for a job I'm not qualified for,
Right.
and you'll give me the job and you think you want me until you get me, right? Same way in relationships, right? So I'm in the interviewing process with this, whatever. And so I've got the accelerants and he's got the whiskey. But I'm like, okay, I better not drink the whiskey. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different beast when you start dealing with that. And so anyway, he passes me the bottle and he's like, here, you want to drink? And I was like, no, I better not. And he said, why are you scared? No, I'm not. You should be. But I'm not. So, I chugged it, threw it back, chugged it. And he looked at me and he said, I think I'm in love. And that's a perfect storm of 2 alcoholics getting together. And I had gotten pregnant with my youngest. And this is where, right before I get sober. So at this point, I'm drinking a 5th of Kentucky Deluxe a day. I've never, not once, drank like a lady, except for maybe when I was 9 and I drank a wine cooler. Like I always drank. It was not the mixed drinks. It just wasn't me. Like I would drink out of the bottle. And so I'm drinking a 5th of Kentucky Deluxe a day, and I'm doing these accelerants every single day. There's not a day sober. And I have this job, and I get pregnant, and I can't stop. Not even a little. And I used to tell myself, like, I'll never be that. I'll never be that, until I was. And I hated myself. Like I remember being in that broken down trailer on that dead end road and looking at that bottle of Kentucky Deluxe and being big with child and telling myself, just take one. just take one. And I would always finish the bottle. And you want to talk about the guilt that you have as a mother. Feeling your baby moving inside you, knowing that you have just put all this alcohol in your body. There's a line in our big book, and it talks about the utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And I know that line to the very depths of my being, because it was necessary that I not do that. And I really, really wished I wouldn't, but I did it anyway. And I love my kids. But I couldn't stop. That's powerlessness. For me, that is my true powerlessness at the core. There's never a time that I could ever think that I could drink normally when I would do something like that. And there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes with that. So, by this time I'm, I lose my job. They laid me off. They really should have fired me. So that was kind of a very nice thing for them to do, because I could get unemployment. And my mom, I live on my parents' land in a broken down trailer. Okay. Me, my 2 kids, this guy, and I'm pregnant. And my mom is at the hospital with her dying mother. Her mother had had a heart attack. Okay. And my oldest, Jeffrey, was really sick. He had strep throat. I didn't know, but he was really sick. And I'd been drinking, as I did every day. And I didn't want to take him to the hospital because I'd been drinking. And it got worse as the night progressed. And I finally took him to the hospital, and I took him to the emergency room. And while we're at the emergency room, I have my first contraction.
Oh, no.
And I have been doing accelerants and drinking. And I know that I can't have this baby at this hospital or they'll take my kids.
I'm sorry, how pregnant were you at the time? How many months?
So I was 8 months pregnant. So he was early.
Wow.
And I drove all the way back out to the country. It's about 15 miles away from the hospital, timing my contractions. And I walk into the trailer and I tell, my youngest one's father, who was there, I sent my son off to bed and I said, I'm in labor. And he didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to think. He had never had a baby. He's looking at me and going, I think maybe you're just stressed out. You know what I mean? That's not how that works. But, I thought maybe you're right. So I laid down and tried to self-will myself into calming down so that I wouldn't. It sounds ridiculous, but it is ridiculous when you're in the throes of that. And so at the end of the day, what happens is I'm in labor for 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, I said the Lord's Prayer again and again and again. And I learned the Lord's Prayer in Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 19, because I came to AA before. You see, I wasn't like y'all, right? Like I could still drink. I just needed to not do the other stuff. I'm different, Y'all told me to get a sponsor. I got a sponsor, but I never called her. Y'all told me to read the big book, and I thought we just read it in a meeting. Why would I do it again? Pray on your knees in the morning and at night. And it was like, why would I do that? God hears me however I pray, as if I had a relationship with God, which I didn't. But I learned the Lord's Prayer in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where I learned it. And in that 4 hours, in that broken down trailer on that dead end road, God showed up. God showed up. And that little boy, I delivered him. I gave birth to that boy in that trailer that night. And my whole plan was just, if I could just stay in this trailer and stay sober long enough to go to the hospital and both our systems be clean, they won't take my kids. Don't let them take my kids. That was it. That was the desperate thought of really a dying alcoholic, right? It was all coming crashing down.
Isn't Jeri Dawn absolutely fantastic? As a reminder, we're going to follow up with part 2 of her story next week. And also, as a reminder, she will be at the Crested Butte Conference in Colorado at the end of July this summer. Now, on to a little bit of listener feedback. Amy writes in, and Amy says, "Hey, John, I am in Lutz, Florida, L-U-T-Z, Florida. It's about 30 minutes north of Tampa. I've been sober going on 15 months in 3 days. Oh, good for you, Amy. And she says, and I was on Spotify looking for more podcasts, and I found yours. I started listening from episode 1 back at the beginning of April, and I'm currently on episode 146. You're making quite a, I've always wondered about people who do that. They get to see what it was like right at the beginning and how, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. That first episode that I did with a guy named Mumbai Mike, I grabbed him he was visiting from India. I grabbed him out of a meeting in Frisco here. And I said, hey man, I'm starting this little thing. Would you come over and record with me? And he said, sure. We got on. And then I had to figure out, well, now I have it recorded. How do you get it out there? It's a whole thing, right? But anyway, I'm glad you started at the beginning. And then Amy goes on, I listen in the car and while I'm at work grooming dogs. Oh, that's great. Well, hopefully you get some good vibes from the podcast here to transfer to the little doggies. She says, I love that you are my meeting between meetings, and I have cried a lot on multiple speakers because they have touched me all so deeply with their stories. I'm very thankful to have found your podcast, and I can't wait to catch up on today's. And I'm in the Facebook group now. Well, good for you, Amy. That's great. I remember seeing you. So if those of you who are out there wonder, what's she talking about, this Facebook group? How can I join this Facebook group? Well, just go to your Facebook application, search up Sober Speak Secret Group, ask for admission into the group, and we will get you on in. But thank you for writing in, Amy. Paul writes in, and Paul says, hi, John M. I discovered Sober Speak about 4 months ago, and I listen to about 4 episodes a week. I always walk away with something and often share it with my home group. Lost and Found is my home group in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's a good name. AA as a whole, all the members and all that sort of stuff, come up with the most clever names. By the way, we just started one in Frisco here called Stove Touchers Group. If you're over here in Frisco and want to come on by and visit with us, you're more than welcome to come. But anyway, all the various names that people come up with for these groups are just incredible. Anyway, Paul says, about myself, my sobriety date is this time around is May 5th of 2024. I just recently celebrated 1 year, my 1 year anniversary. Good for you, Paul. He says, I have a long history of relapses, and I honestly believe this time around is different. I understand that, my friend. He said, for really the first time, I am seeking to be ruthlessly honest with myself, fully owning my alcoholism. Good for you. He says, unbelievably, this time around, AA, as well as things like your podcast, have proven to be essential helps and supports, rather than stuff I had to do. They've been support rather than stuff that I had to do to quit to quiet my family down. Who would have thought? Blessings to you and your service, Paul B. Well, God bless you, Paul. I can relate to going in and out for many years over and over and over. And I really don't know what clicked this last time, but I'm glad it did. Rusty writes in. Rusty says, yo, Lil Ginge. And just for those of you who have not heard some of Rusty's emails in the past or letters, Rusty is incarcerated, and he starts it out by saying, yo, Lil Ginge. He says, and for those of you who may not be familiar, I kind of have a nickname as Lil Ginge, but that is we'll go into that some other time. Anyway, he says, I just wrapped up listening to episode number 397 with Adam G. Wow! Exclamation point. That was an amazing testimony of a member's spiritual experience, which resulted in a fundamental transportation. One day at a time, Adam is rolling up on 8 years of abstinence from his former insanity. Please let him know, which I did, Rusty. I sent this right on over to him, and he was very grateful. He responded. He says, wow, that's so cool, but I did let Adam know. Please let him know that his story will impact those baking behind these prison fences. Also, thank you for the kind words about me shared with Mike M. on episode number 390. You're welcome, Rusty. Before you began your interview with Adam G., you touched upon money issues. The root of all evil is what the good book says about it. Recently, I caught myself daydreaming about what it would be like to live with Elon Musk's bank balances. Then I remembered my, quote, isms and quickly answered that question with a resounding conclusion that it would not end up well. I relate to that, Rusty. My higher power knows in his divine wisdom that I need to keep it simple. KISS, KISS. Yeah, and I'm thinking about this while you're writing this, or while I'm reading what you wrote, Rusty. I've always heard that money makes you more of whatever you are already, right? If you are a giving person, you'll probably be more giving. If you're a greedy person, you'll probably be more greedy. If you're a happy person, you'll probably be more happy. If you're a selfish person, it'll probably take you down a bad road. But that's a good point, Rusty. Anyway, Rusty continues on. Consider how rich you truly are. And he's talking to me. Number one, you live in the free. Number two, you have a beautiful family. Number three, you have long-term sobriety under your belt. Number four, you got an awesome little dog named Ginger. Actually, the little dog is named Maisie, but she could be named Ginger because she has my color hair. Number five, you've got your health. And then in parentheses, as once famously declared in the movie Raising Arizona. Number six, you've got a podcast that reaches untold numbers of folks that that need to receive the knowledge and the wisdom. I could go on, so you should be seeing my point. Money is a tool. You're right, Rusty. It isn't the solution. It does not purchase sobriety because sobriety is priceless. Way back in 1986, I heard an old-timer talking about a multimillionaire who would have his private helicopters come fetch him from the treatment centers when he craved the next drink. He died drunk. Remember what Jesus told his disciples. What profit is it to a man to inherit the entire world but forfeit his eternal souls? Peace out, my brother from the other mother. Service, unity, and recovery. Rusty R. at the French M. Robertson unit in Abilene, Texas. God bless you, Rusty. And thank you so much for writing in. I always enjoy hearing what you have to say. And finally tonight, MR writes in. Oh yeah, I remember this one. I don't think I really had it. So it was in the MR says, in the subject line was newcomer. They said, I don't know if it was, hi, John, I really love Sober Speak and I am still learning a lot. Still, what I would love to hear from everyone's experience, strength, and hope is in those first few days or weeks of sobriety, what do you do? I understand that once people have that, they go onto the steps in order to stay sober. In every podcast, you say, welcome to the newcomer. But what does the newcomer do that has still not quit drinking? Can you please give us some guidance in this area? Well, Okay, so what I did is I responded to MR and I said, hey, why don't you come on into the super secret Facebook group and ask that question? You'll get all kinds of responses, right? I don't think they ever asked that question in there, but that's what I would suggest to do. Or go to meetings and bring that up as a subject, and you will have plenty of people talking about it. And I try not to give advice. I just share my experience, strength, and hope, and I could go on and tell you about what happened to me in the first weeks of sobriety. But I don't want to do that for folks. But maybe, just maybe, if I remember to, I always forget, I can ask one of our upcoming guests, what did you do to stay sober in your first weeks of recovery? And if anybody else is out there and they want to write in and give me their kind of, I don't know, feedback or just their insight on what they did during those first days, weeks of sobriety, just keep it kind of short, pithy, if you will. And you can email me at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. All right, everybody, that is one more episode in the books in the can, I think is what they say. And I keep coming back. It works if you work it. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back next week. And may God bless you and keep you until then. Love you guys. Thanks so much for listening in. I do really mean it. Bye-bye.